This is what you call the Socratic method, and ask a question that they're not prepared for, but is on point. We've asked all of you to read this book, Mindset, and talked about this concept of a growth mindset. We'll visit more about that now, have an interactive discussion among us and with you all. What I would like to ask the panelists, though, is what movie can they reflect on as capturing this concept of a growth mindset? I'm going to take one of my all-time favorites, which is a gimme. And if people here are like totally stumped, you can agree with me and I won't be offended. The movie features that great actor from Meatballs, for those who remember one of Bill Murray's classics, or Stripes. It's Groundhog Day, which is really a tremendous movie. And maybe in honor of Robin Williams, I'll say The Fisher King as another one, both of which meditate on this theme of what it means to have a growth mindset. Tanya, what's your favorite? So I'll introduce people. Tanya, your favorite, maybe introduce yourself and then mention your favorite movie capturing growth mindset.
Okay. My name is Tanya Luna. I'm a CU alum. I just graduated last year. I work at Colorado Legal Services right now in their Family and Children's Unit. I think my favorite movie that kind of reflects the growth mindset is Rudy. You know, he worked his tail off. No one believed in him, but he achieved his ultimate goal. And if you haven't seen that movie, I definitely recommend watching it.
I think the movie, my name is G. I'm a 2L here. I think the movie that I would probably pick is Shawshank Redemption. And the two characters that get released, one guy is not able, the old dude, Brooks, gets out of jail and isn't able to adjust and isn't able to change to how the world has changed since he's been incarcerated. And then when Red gets out, he's able to kind of find his way. And they're not static, or Red isn't static. And the other guy, Tim Robbins' character, isn't static. They're able to change and evolve and adapt and create success from the situation that they're currently in. So for me, that's probably the one.
My name's Laura McNabb. I'm a CU alum. I graduated in 2012. Right now I'm a law clerk for Chief Justice Rice. And my favorite movie demonstrating growth mindset is a very serious movie called Tommy Boy. And in that movie, nothing will stop him. He's willing to adapt and change and to leverage things about his personality that people don't immediately see as adding value. And he finds some way to really own them and use them. So he doesn't change who he is, he just changes how people view those skills. So I think that's a great example.
Good morning. My name is Christine Arguello. I am a United States District Court judge here in Colorado. I did not go to CU Law, but I taught
We've
here.
Adopted Judge Arguello.
And I was CU undergrad, and I was counsel for the CU campus before I got appointed to the bench. And I do spend a lot of my time with CU just because I think it's such a great law school. And my son is a CU law grad, so we have the connection. Well, mine is also a very serious movie. My kids tease me about it. My husband teases me about it because it is my absolute favorite movie. Dirty Dancing. And I love that movie because it's this sheltered, very intelligent, but somewhat unsophisticated young lady who is sort of the plain Jane next to her sister, who's considered the pretty talented one. And she comes into her own, if you haven't seen her, while she's on vacation, and it's because it has Patrick Swayze dancing. But it's the plain Jane girl that kind of comes into her own and realizes that she does have some talent, and she's willing to buck the system that her dad has so much ingrained in her to help others to do things that her parents might not think were the right thing, but and she gets the good-looking guy at the end. So I think her mindset was, once she determined that she could do this, she just went for it and ended up coming out, getting the good-looking guy.
Good morning, my name is Brad Bernthal, and I've got the movie poster on my wall, Rocky. In particular, I recall being in law school, and the training runs, if you recall, there's like crack the 6 eggs, and it's all done in one shot. He had to drink those eggs. I'm convinced. I've watched that thing enough times. And then he's out with Butkus the dog, and the first time he's out at 4 or 5 a.m., running through the streets of Philadelphia. He's wheezing, he's still smoking, and as the train runs progress, there's that you can still hear the music, in your mind. And I always felt like when you're in the library and ain't nobody else there, that's the Rocky equivalent of pushing things along. I like that.
So with that great setup, let me follow on. And this is a concept that's not familiar to a lot of people, because sometimes there's a fantasy that talent is this innate thing that people either have or don't have. And what's great about Rocky is it's clear you have to have some level of talent, and let me assure you, you all have that or you would not be here. But what really differentiates people are those who will wake up at 4 in the morning, will drink the eggs, and will keep pushing themselves, like Rocky does. And sometimes you need it to be like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. You keep getting the same lesson over and over again until you finally figure it out. And for all of us, that's okay. The critical point is that we are committed, like Tim Robbins in The Shawshank Redemption, to saying, you know what, whatever situations I'm in, I'm going to learn from this situation. I mentioned yesterday, Tony Gwynn said he learned something every day at the ballpark. So let me ask you all, just on the most basic level, how do you think about this concept that you don't get anywhere without hard work and effort, and that facing challenges and setbacks are a part of growth? Johnny, you want to start?
Sure. Well, not to sound corny or anything, but I think growth mindset was like my mantra for law school. Everyone comes here, and everyone was the best in undergrad and graduate school if you went to graduate school before. And you come here, and it's not that easy. I mean, I remember my first semester of 1L year, I studied my butt off. And, I didn't do anything fun, and I wasn't very happy. It was pretty miserable, actually. And I just did okay when the grades went out. And I was like, oh my gosh, I did all of that, and I just did okay, And so I had to change my study routine. I went back to what worked for me, and I did the same. I did fine, and there comes a point where you're going to fail in law school. Everyone does. And my fiance was top of this class, and he's like, tell them that I got rejected from 70% of jobs that I applied for. And I was like, okay, I'll tell him. But it's tough, and you will fail, but you need to learn. You need to learn from it and say, okay, maybe I'm not going to be the best at a regular written law school exam, but what am I going to excel at? And that's what I did, My thing was more practical, like clinic, I really excelled at it, and I loved it. But it took me failing to realize, okay, what makes me tick? How am I going to get through law school, and how am I going to enjoy it? And I'm really glad I did that, because if not, I would have just sat there feeling sorry for myself and unhappy. And now, being a new attorney, it's tough. I make mistakes every day, and I'm like, dang it, I forgot to ask my client that question. I have to call her when I get home at 7 p.m., and it's not fun. But, I'm going to ask that question the next time, and I'm going to get my job done at work, And so it's this learning, and I think that's the beauty of the law. It's not just you're going to know it all and you're going to be a great attorney from the get-go, because that's boring. That's not why we're here. We're here to be lifelong learners, and I think that's what the growth mindset encompasses.
I thought about this a lot. One of the things that resonated to me is that I was fortunate enough I played some professional football. And there's this narrative that gets created, like, oh, football, you were always good at that. And you start to internalize that. And then you think about, wait a minute, no, I wasn't. I got benched when I was a senior in high school. I remember getting up at 4:30 in the morning and catching the train and going and working out for 2 hours. But after you get good, you forget about, or you don't remember all the pain, the struggle, and strife that it took to get to that level. And law school is that same thing. I came in, like all of you guys, you're like, hey, I'm bright, I got a graduate degree, I've got this and that. And then I was, reeling after first semester grades. And then I thought, okay, what did you do before? And I practiced. And there's nothing that you're good at, whether you sing or play music or whatever skills and talent that you have, you didn't get great at it by just showing up. And you had to grind and grind and grind. And so for me, that's what I did. I went back to the drawing board. I talked to every professor, sat down with them. Hey, can we go over my final? What did I do wrong? How can I improve? I talked to Phil. I talked to everybody. What can I do? How do I get better at this? And then I worked at it. I set up Professor Griffin and I are like best friends because I stayed in her office until I became a proficient writer. I mean, you have to. Professor Bauer, who's my writing instructor, same thing, in her office until I got better at it. And that's what you have to do. None of you are going to just show up and be amazing. It doesn't work like that. So whatever it is you're phenomenal at now, which I'm sure everybody out here, and when you start talking to each other, you're going to be like, oh my God, did you know this person did X, Y, and Z? But you grinded at it. You worked really hard, and that doesn't change. And so the most important thing is that when you do, you will be devastated by something. When you are, what do? Do you sulk and cry about it? I did. But then I did, and everybody has that, but then you have to, what are you going to do next? And you have to talk to people that love and support you and that can help you and just keep working at it.
Well said. So I think G's point about working hard is really important, but for me, in addition to working hard, it was about who I surrounded myself with and what kind of thinking they engaged in. So it wasn't necessarily finding people who'd read growth mindset and could say, have a growth mindset right now. It was more about people who had this frame of problem solving that I found beneficial. So it's the difference between saying, ooh, I saw you had a lot of red on that piece of writing you got back from your professor, and saying, it looks like you had a lot of awesome comments. Do you have any good ideas from them? Those kind of people are the kind of people that helped me love law school. And it took me a while to find people that would help me bring that out, and I could bring it out in them. But it was so important for me to be around people who could say, you got a B+ in whatever class, and that's disappointing to you, but did you like the class? Did you work hard? What techniques did you think worked well? What didn't work well? And to take that experience and feel like that was actually a turning point for me instead of a failure. So it's about who you're around and who you allow to influence how you're thinking about things that made a big difference for me.
Well, she's complaining about a B+. My first semester in law school, and my dream was to go to Harvard. And I graduated top of my class here at CU and got into Harvard. And all my life, it had been pretty easy. I just needed to work a little bit harder if I didn't get the top grade the first time, and I could get it. And that wasn't the case with law school. Law school to me was like a foreign language that I could just not crack the code. My first C ever in my life, and I had rarely even had a B+, was in law school, my first semester crim law, and I was devastated. And I knew they had made a mistake letting me in. I wasn't qualified to be here, and I moped and I cried and I sulked for a day because all my classmates all had gotten A's. Nobody admitted to anything less than an A. And it was really, really a traumatic event for me. But what I came to realize from that is, one, I had the fortune of being married, and my husband let me pout and mope for one day, and then when I got up to do it the next day and feel sorry for myself, he said, enough. Did you know that material? And I said, yes, I did. That's what really kills me. I thought I aced that exam. And then he said, well, so what does it matter what your law professor thinks? If you knew that material, when you get out, you are going to be a dynamite lawyer. You will represent your client. And the message I want to get to you, it's not about the grade anymore, guys. Yes, grades are going to be important for a certain percentage of you to get the big law firm jobs if you want them. But it's not about the grade anymore. It's about the knowledge. It's about the skills that you are going to obtain, how you are going to represent your clients. And all your life you've been told it's about the grade. The best lesson that Harvard ever taught me is that it's okay not to be the best, as long as you give it your best. And you take the knowledge that is going to be imparted to you, and you will turn that around. See, in Harvard didn't hurt me. I'm on the federal court bench. Now, a lot of work, hard work between that time and when I finally got appointed. But I went in after that with the attitude is I'm just going to be the best lawyer I can be. I will represent my clients to the best of my ability. So don't let it be just about the grade. Yeah, if you can be top 10%, that's great, but that's not going to make or define who you are as a lawyer. Let it be about the knowledge and the skill that you're going to pick up, about the contacts that you're going to make, about the community service you're going to do. And then don't let anybody control your life. You decide what you want to do. I didn't come back to Colorado right out of law school because I wanted to be a trial lawyer. And the law firms that I interviewed with, of course, I was very naive, didn't know anything. I interviewed with all the big law firms that went to on-campus interviews at Harvard. And when I would tell them I wanted to be a trial lawyer, they were looking at me kind of skeptically saying, little girl, you can't do it. Now, they didn't say it that bluntly, but they kept trying to talk me into doing wills and trusts. And I took my life into my own hands, and I said, I'm not going back to Colorado if I can't be a trial attorney. I went to Miami because the firm there hired me to be in the litigation department in Miami. Why? Because I was tired of the Northeast cold. Just picked it out of the hat. And the firm that hired me did a really good job. I got hired to be a trial attorney, and they mentored me well. And then after a while, I came back to Colorado. So don't let anybody tell you what your career is going to be. You take it into your own hands. You decide what it is you want to be.
I think this book points out something about motivation. If we go back to, I thought G's comments were fantastic, and it speaks to, we already know a lot about what goes into becoming an expert across domains. And if you think about what G just recited, it's, first of all, putting in the hours with an intensity that few people can sustain. Second is using a training regime, practice designed by an expert. He's in with the writing instructors, expert eyes, getting 3, ongoing feedback. It's not just a one-time shot, it's getting ongoing hands-on feedback. He's doing that. And 4, you do it for a period of time. Many of you have heard the 10,000-hour rule that Malcolm Gladwell has popularized. And it turns out that this takes about 7 years of really grinding in a domain before you have expertise, okay? So we know that, but the interesting question to me that Mindset points up is, what is it that motivates you to do that for 7 years? You know, that's going to get you through the next 3 years. It's going to get you through when you get grades that were not what you expected or thought, because you don't know when it's going to show up. And Mindset to me is an interesting way to start thinking about what is it that motivates you to do the right things day in, day out. Some of it might be in the book Mindset. Others of you need to pay attention to other things that motivate you. But to me, it's a question of motivation.
So let me get a little more concrete, and I'll offer the following frame. So for any of you who have kids or have nieces or nephews, you're reminded of what G said, which is really important. There's this fantasy or this myth or narrative that, oh, these people who are experts or talented, it's because that's how they always were, glossing over all the hard work that it got to get there. And Tony Gwynn never forgot us about hard work. He kept doing it. Some people actually slack off once they get there and ultimately pay a price for that, because you have to keep working hard. Michael Jordan, right, benched in high school, worked harder than anybody else. It wasn't because, you know, he only had this innate talent. No, he had a drive. So the question is, when you get a setback, how do you handle it? There's a temptation sometimes, G's experience, to say, screw it, I'll just drop out of law school, right? That would be an extreme version, but many of you are going to have that thought. And the question I have for all the panels, and I'll take it first, is what setback can you remember? What failure that you're like, you know, hits
How
you
many to
hard
choose from?
and you learn from? So let me give you mine, which I'll try to remind you all. Amy Griffin's going to do some work around preparing for your first summer job and about work assignments. So my first summer, I worked for a lawyer who was depending on me. And he gave me an assignment to draft a brief for him. It was on a really interesting, great constitutional issue. And I had failed to ask any questions of him about what his expectations were. And I had not done this before and didn't develop an adequate plan to do it well. So by the time I got him the draft, which is like Thursday night of a brief due Monday morning, I had boxed him in a corner with, I guess, a nod to Dirty Dancing, right? No one puts baby in a corner. I gave him a draft that, in retrospect, sucked. And he said to me afterwards, fairly kindly, he said, you know, I knew I'd have to work on the writing. I didn't realize I'd have to work on the research too, because he expected, if nothing else, that my draft would have at least been comprehensive on the research, and it wasn't. And he worked all weekend to get it to a place that he could file it, and that was because I didn't do my work well enough. And that stuck with me in terms of what it means to do a work assignment well. Brad?
For me, it was high school, got cut my senior year from the high school basketball team. And I kid you not, I still wake up with nightmares about it. It kills me. And You know, I look back at why that happened and what to do with it, and it really underscored to me, if you want something very badly, don't put yourself in harm's way. Don't make it a close call. And you know, for me, I suspect that everybody's got something like that in your past in here. And going back to the question of motivation, you know, when I'm really struggling, all I've got to do is draw upon that memory and how bad that felt, how bad it still feels. And you know, for me, that helps drive me to try to take care of things that matter to me going forward.
The most traumatic event was getting a C. But I'll tell you what I did is, even though I said, okay, it's not going to be about the grade anymore, I made an appointment with my professor, and I went in to talk to him. And when I walked in his door, first it took me 3 weeks to get an appointment with him. When I walked in the door, he says, I'm not changing your grade. Now, apparently all these students had been going in complaining and demanding that he change their grade. I said, I don't want you to change my grade. I want to know what I did wrong so that I don't do it again. So he gave me an A+ exam, and he gave me my exam, and he let me go off for 2 hours in the library, and I compared them side by side. And at the end, I went back and I gave it to him. He said, did you see the difference? I said, no. I saw the difference between an A+ and a B, but not an A+ and a C. And he said, well, you missed this point here. And I said, no, that's on this page here. He said, you missed this point here. You didn't get points for that. I said, no, that's here. So what I came to realize was that it was oftentimes just about how you structured it, whether you structured it the way they wanted. I felt really good because a friend of mine went in right after me, and he said the first words out of the professor's mouth were, I'm not changing your grade. Some people didn't get the grade they deserved in the first place. And I had to actually think that that was somehow related, that he realized that I did not deserve the C. I never got another C. But I agree with what Jean said. It takes a lot of work. You go in and you talk to your professors. If you're not understanding something, and you can't get it from your classmates or from somebody, then you go in and talk to the professors. And the professors here at CU are really good about this. That's the one thing I would say. The Harvard Law professors, for the most part, really put up with us students because we paid their salaries. But taking 3 weeks to get in to see your professor to talk about your test, grade is not good. The professors here are different. So take advantage of that. And even if they're not your professors, find a professor that you have a good rapport with and get to know them. Because those professors, if you can be a research associate, do all of these things that are going to get you the experience that you need. But you can't just sit back and say, okay, I'm not good at this. You have to figure out how you're going to improve and become better at it.
One thing Judge Arguello mentioned was the possibility that other students are also your teachers. And one of my initial, I think, challenges in law school was to not feel intimidated by people in my classes who were clearly excelling and clearly understanding the content more quickly than I was. My temptation was to interpret that as, oh, they're going to be great lawyers, and I'm going to be awful. I don't know why I'm here. They're so much smarter than I am. But I had a classmate named Mark, and I'll never forget Mark because in my contracts class, which was my very first class in law school, and I was really, really struggling. I didn't get it. I wasn't understanding the reading. I would come to class and be like, what are you guys talking about? How did you get that from this case? And Mark saw that I was struggling, and after class one day, he said, did you get what the professor was saying? And he kind of informally tutored me almost every day after class and helped me with questions that I wasn't getting from the professor's responses. And he made it okay that I wasn't at the same level that he was, and he normalized that. I got a really great grade in contracts thanks to Mark, and when I graduated, I thanked him again because he was someone in our class that made it okay to learn from each other and made it okay that I didn't know, and that it didn't mean I couldn't know, it just meant I needed more help. And I always really appreciated that, and I think he really helped me kind of foster my own growth mindset by just normalizing the fact that we all learn at different rates, so let's help each other.
I'm going to echo what Judge Arguello said. The first grade so I have a graduate degree in economics, University of Delaware. My lowest grade, I think, was an A-. I got here, grades came out, and the first grade that popped up on the computer was a C+ in contracts. I called Phil, and I'm like, there has to be some kind of error, like maybe the person below me, they entered their grade. I couldn't imagine the idea that that's what I received in the class. It feels like, no, I'm pretty sure that's what you got. And, that dealing with that is a really, really traumatic thing. And the other thing Judge Arguello said, one of my very good friends here, she's brilliant, and we all talked, and you say to yourself, I don't belong here. And she said it yesterday in our little Real Talk group. I said it to Phil, like, hey, I'm pretty sure you made a mistake, I'm pretty sure you made a mistake letting me in here. And that's genuinely, how I felt. And, he's like, no, we didn't. And, that was a tough piece, but you have to kind of pick yourself up from that and realize that, no, it's not a mistake, and you have to move on. The other thing that Laura said, I have about 5 really good friends, and they're like family. I would do anything for them. I think they would do anything for me. And it's nothing but positive. It's nothing but love. It's nothing but support. There's no negative. There's no, oh, you're not smart because you didn't get this. It's no, hey, I got an A and you didn't. There's none of that. It's all, gee, we know you can do it. And when second semester came and I did really, really well, the first people I called were my friends. And I said, hey, guess what I got? And even they got emotional. They're like, oh my God, we're so happy, we're so proud. That's amazing. And that's what school is about. And I think as well, I emailed or whatever, my legal writing professors, Phil, Professor Bloom, to extend thank you. I sincerely thank you, because it takes so many people for you to be successful. There's so many hands that are gonna go into supporting you, helping you out, that it's not, you're not an island, and it doesn't work like that. There's so many people that are going to chip in on your success, and let them chip in on your success. But you have to rely on those people and work. But yeah, you're gonna get exposed, and you're gonna feel like, I've been lied to my whole life, because everybody has always told me I'm smart, and you will question if you can read or not at times. You're like, I read this, they're words, I know them, but I have no idea what's going on. And so, but you have to remember, this is the short game, and I don't take it too much time. We talk about grades. I thought a lot about this conversation. We talk about grades all the time. I have 4 things. It's grades, it's your network, it's your people skills, and it's your work product. If your grades are okay, those other 3, you're killing it, you're gonna be fine. But you can have amazing grades, and if your personality is so-so, if your work product when you get out is so-so, you're gonna struggle. And so we talk about grades, but those other 3 pieces, in my opinion, are just as important. And your grades stop. Like once you get that first job, that second job, your grades aren't going to matter anymore. Those other 3 skills are going to matter the rest of your legal career.
Yeah, I mean, she's right. Do you know how many times people have asked me about my grades since I graduated? 0. It's your work product, definitely. My biggest failure was I worked so hard 1L a year to land a law firm job, because that's what I thought I was supposed to do, and I got it, and I was really happy, and I networked with the attorneys, and I carried my little clipboard around like they teach you, and all valuable skills. I learned some great things about legal writing, research there. Was I completely happy there? No, but I kept telling myself, this is what you're supposed to do. You're going to be a lawyer, and they didn't invite me back the next summer, and it was devastating, but I picked myself up. I went back to the drawing table and said, okay, what can I take from that experience? Talked to my mentor there, very nice. I still talk to him. And I decided I needed to go back to my roots. I've always been interested in public service, and I started interning with Colorado Legal Services, and I'm very content, and it's a challenge every day, and I love what I do. Would I have been happy at a law firm? I don't know. And so I'm happy that I had that failure, because it turned into a blessing.
So I want to get to another really important point. I mentioned it yesterday, and we've kind of led up to it, which is how hard it is for people when they're struggling to ask for help. G hit this really hard, and I hope you all are taking that in. A instructive moment was I taught a course last spring, and I said at one point, anyone who doesn't have a job yet for the summer, please come talk to me. And one student did, and she said, you said this, and I sucked up my pride, and I came talk to you. And I thought, that's an interesting concept. Her pride was that she shouldn't have to ask for help, and that asking for help was a sign of weakness. we really want all of you to get that thought outside of your head, because nobody in law got anywhere without lots of people helping them. They may, just like G said about being good at football, try to pretend, hey, I got this all on my own. But one of G's 4 things was his network that he built. He built meaningful relationships, and he described how he's done it with myself, with Professor Griffin, with others, because he has invested in building relationships with people. That takes time. Tanya has built some very meaningful, powerful mentoring relationships. Those who've worked with Judge Arguello have benefited from her as a mentor. But all of us, it's been part of this process. But yet there's still this voice that many people hear in their head, don't ask for help. How do you get past that?
Well, if you want to succeed, you have to. And I would say I just did a essay for CU Voices, which is the alumni newsletter. You can go online and read it. And it was about, I was talking to my law clerks about how it was that we all ended up sitting around my conference table in my chambers. And I told them it was hard work, big dreams, and serendipity. And by serendipity, what I meant is there are so many people in my life that I just kind of cross paths with, some on purpose, some by accident. But I felt early, I'm a survivor. Early in life, I said, when I got into the law firm, I said, if I'm going to survive here, it's not going to just be hard work and doing good work. There's a lot of politics. I have to find the most influential partner in this law firm that I have somewhat of a rapport with, and I need to make myself indispensable to him. And that's what I did. And I didn't even know it was called a mentor back then. It was just, I knew that to succeed, if I wanted to make partner, that's what I was going to have to do. And I look back on my life, there are so many people that have mentored me, have guided me, have introduced me to the right people, that those doors have opened because of the help that I was willing to do. And you just can't afford to stand on your pride here. And you shouldn't, because everybody here, and I make this offer every time I speak here, and I will tell you, in the past, maybe 3 of you will take me up on it. I say, give me a call. I love to mentor young people. Call me. I'll sit down and have a cup of coffee with you. I'll talk to you about the legal practice here in Colorado. I'll talk to you about anything you want to about becoming a lawyer. 3 of you will take me up on it. At least that's what's happened in the past. And I don't know why. And I think it's because you think I don't mean it. I said, if I didn't mean it, I wouldn't say it. But you just have to get over that you can do it all on your own, because you can't. I mean, you might be able to accomplish a certain amount, but you will not go as far as you need to go without the help of a lot of other people. And those people are willing to help you.
Well, as someone who did take Judge Arguello up on that offer, I encourage you to do it because it was really, really fun and really beneficial. One thing that Dean Leary told me when I worked for her, I worked for Dean Leary and Phil and Melissa Hart after law school, and one thing that Dean Leary said to me that's always stuck with me that I think kind of gets to this how to get over your pride moment, which is when you're thinking about a decision, try to decide, are you making the decision out of fear or respect? So respect for yourself, respect for the person whom you're working with. What's driving you? Decisions that you make out of fear. I'll look stupid. They won't think I'm smart enough. Maybe I can't do it. Those decisions are always going to be bad. They're going to lead to bad things because you're not thinking. You're just defaulting to this fear response. When you start making decisions out of respect, I want to do a good work product. How do I do that? I want to respect this person's time. How can I do that? I want to respect who I am and be authentic to myself. Those decisions will usually end up on the right side of the decision-making spectrum because you're motivated by something that's requiring you to think and to be very thoughtful about your next moves and what you're trying to accomplish. So for me, getting over pride is thinking, is this a fear response? Am I defaulting? Or am I going to do something a little bit more meaningful? Am I going to choose to be respectful of myself and everybody around me in making this decision? And that helps me get over it might not be perfect, whatever. It's out of respect that I'm going to ask for feedback. I'm going to ask for somebody to rip apart something I've written so it can be better because I respect myself and my boss enough to do it right. So that helps me.
I'd encourage you to think about formal knowledge versus tacit knowledge. And the classroom is a great platform for transmitting formal knowledge, the elements of contract or elements of criminal law. It's not a great place for transmitting tacit knowledge, that is, knowing in doing. So for example, think about riding a bicycle, one of my favorite examples. Like I could give you right now, here is how you make a left-hand turn on a bicycle. You place your hands on the handlebar, you steer it to the left, and you shift your weight to but that's not how you do it. It's a tacit thing that you just do it, right? And with respect to leaning on others, there's a certain amount of formal learning that can be super powerful that way, but especially the tacit knowledge of here's how things actually work, and here's what you need to know, and here's feedback about how you can do that better. That's where I think you absolutely have to be leaning on others at every turn. And that part of knowledge transfer, it's really on you outside the classroom to pick up.
So G, how did you figure it out? Because I'll say G was one of my advisees. And in terms of how to be a perfect advisee, he was off the charts, off the charts. Most of you will be naturally leaning back, waiting for your advisor to reach out for you, waiting for Judge Arguello to invite you to coffee. And guess what? She's not going to invite you to coffee.
I just did.
That's it. That was your invitation right there. So how did you do it?
I'm going to actually say the inverse. For me, it was pride. It was, I'm a competitor. I love to win. I'm not a jerk about it, but if we play chess, checkers, whatever, I'm going to try to win. And my pride could not deal with my performance the first semester. So I want to be able to say, this is what I did. This is how good I am. And so in order to be able to get back to that, what do I have to do? So I can either sit with this B, or I can work my ass off and talk to whoever I need to talk to and ask and grind and work to be able to say I got an A. And so for me, it was pride. It was the fact that I just was not willing to settle for that. And everybody here, most of you guys here, you wouldn't be in law school if you didn't like being the best. And I just love being the best a lot more than, having my pride and pretending I did well. And the other, in terms of knowing how, I trusted Phil, I trusted my professors, and you just ask. And if you just ask people, I told my group earlier, and I call them the adults, but the adults here, the deans, most of the professors or whatever, these people, Dean Leary is one of the nicest human beings you can meet. Most of these people are the nicest human beings you can meet, and they are here, their sole focus is to try to help you. And I asked them, and I remember I called Phil up before school started. This is what I want to do. And we met, and he said, great. And I said, here's the things I want to do. Now, what I wound up doing this summer was a complete opposite. I wound up loving it. But, you have to get that experience. But I just couldn't settle for mediocrity. And so my pride didn't let me settle for mediocrity, and I was just willing to do whatever it is it took to improve. And one more thing, also, who you are first semester is not who you are. It just isn't. Don't get stuck on, well, I got a really high grade, so therefore it's going to continue. I got low grades, this is who I am. That's the hardest part about law school, is not letting those grades first semester define you. All of you guys are brilliant. You wouldn't get here, so what? You got a B. Okay, great. You got a B, move on. But you have to care, and you have to want to be better more than you care about your pride.
Yeah, and just to add to that, everyone brings something to the table. You'll be put in small groups, I believe. And those people were like my lifeline, my best friends, that's who I went to. That's who taught me Mueller's Civ Pro, and I went there. I was like, okay, Erie, this way, this is what and they taught me. However, later on in the game, my good friend needed some help interpreting something in Spanish. I was there. Everyone brings something to the table, and that's the best thing about CU Law is everyone is so collegial and willing to lend a hand. Grab it. It's going to be lonely if you don't. And also, y'all need to remember that these people are going to be your colleagues after law school. There's a real world out there, and you might need each other in the future. So just take advantage of it, and it'll be a wonderful experience.
So let me ask one more question. I want to get you all asking some questions, and then we'll do our breakout groups. It's come up a couple times now, and I'll use the phrase that relates to what Judge Arguello said, which is owning your own career. And you all will have a career path you can own. And if you listen to what G said and what Tanya said, they both talked about having an idea, testing it out, and changing it. None of you need to, should, or probably even do really know what you're going to do. and that's okay. Some of you think you know what you're going to do, and that's great. What is important is for all of you to give yourself permission to get excited about some idea, some possible path, and then figure out whether it's the right path and figure out how to advance it. What we really don't want is people to, again, lean back and try to avoid thinking about their future and try to have law school be sort of a random walk without actually any purpose behind it. Both what Tanya and G said is they had an idea, which they've tested out, and they ended up on a different idea that they love. And that is tremendous that they both had the sense they could own their career. What Judge Arguello said is she had an idea of being a trial lawyer and was willing to be adventurous in how to best achieve that idea. And we'll talk to you a lot about what that means. Now, again, like asking for help, these guys make this sound easy. It's not. Owning your career path is hard because it takes a sense of perspective. So I want to ask you guys to reflect on this. Let me first ask, Brad, how do you develop this sense of, okay, I can get an idea, I can test it, I can develop it?
I had a student about 8 years ago named Fareed Moghadazi. I think you met him down in Dallas last year. And I was thinking about today's discussion and who came to mind as someone who's been able to achieve a vision despite the fact that 8 years ago I was having discussions with my wife about, I'm not sure this guy should be a lawyer. And so I called him this morning. And just a little bit of background about Fareed. He set the Entrepreneurial Law Clinic record for hours in a semester that stands today. He worked twice as hard as everybody in that clinic and got half as much done. I mean, it was very much in doubt as to whether I thought that he would be a successful lawyer. But I remember him saying to me in meetings, I want to be an attorney. That was a mantra. It was a vision that he had very clear in his mind. He was going to be an attorney no matter what. A year after school, he bottoms out. He's got no job, nothing's going on. He's taking odd jobs just to make ends meet. He keeps putting himself out there. I want to be an attorney. He meets a family friend at a wedding who says, yeah, that sounds awful. You can come work for me, but I can't pay you anything. And he said, I'll be there. I don't have anything else doing. I'll be there 7 days a week. He's there 7 days a week. He gets a toehold. I want to be an attorney. He starts to see that vision. And he now has his own firm. He's got 5 people working for him. He is an attorney. And to me, the thing is that Fareed, in retrospect, I can see no one worked harder than he did, and he had a very clear vision. And to me, the answer to Phil's question is, at the end of the day, you're not necessarily going to make a straight line path to your vision, but what you really want to know is that at the end of the day, even though there's going to be some meandering, there's going to be some seasoned classes, there's going to be jobs you don't get, there's going to be jobs that you have to take that you don't like. But as long as you've got that vision, people who do that and are willing to put in the work, it happens. You don't know when, but it happens. Love Fareed, by the way. By the way, his response was, when is it? I'll be there. Like it's in an hour. He's like, next time, I'll be there.
I don't think anybody has had a more varied legal career, and that's the great thing about a law degree. You can do so much. I was in private practice for 11 years, 5 years in Miami, 6 years back here in Colorado. But after I made partner, it was like I accomplished my goal, and I said, now the benefit, the last 8 years in this firm has been so that I can be liable for the malpractice of every lawyer in this firm. And I love researching and writing, and I was a partner, and I was too high level then to be able to do my own research and writing. I had to delegate the parts of law that I loved. And I actually went to job counseling because nobody could understand why I was so unhappy. I couldn't understand why I was so unhappy at the firm. I had accomplished my dream. I was making more money than I ever dreamed possible, but I wasn't happy. And what I learned from this job counselor, he made me see that I'm a very goal-oriented person. I set a goal for whatever I'm going for. I put my nose to the grindstone and I accomplish my goal. And then it's like, okay, now what's next? I need challenge in my life. I need to constantly be challenged in the law. And so I would say to you, life is too short to spend your time. I know you have to earn a living to pay back your school loans and all, But life is too short to take a job you don't really love. And if you don't really love your job, you're not going to give 100%. So I left that practice. I took more than a 50% pay cut, which is hard because my husband's a school teacher and I was the main supporter. We moved to Kansas and I became a law professor. Goal was to get tenured and promoted to full professor. I love teaching. I got tenured and promoted to full professor. My husband hated Kansas. And I had promised him we would come back. So I came back. I tried something totally different. Took a pay cut from that 9-month job to go to work for Ken Salazar when he was Attorney General. I was the Chief Deputy Attorney General for the state of Colorado. One, because I got to work with a leader like Ken, but also I hadn't done state government work, something totally new and challenging. $75,000 a year, and I was out 19 years, had been a partner and a full tenured professor, and I took a job for $75,000. Best decision I ever made, because it was really interesting work. I really got to learn politics, which I'd never been involved, and I wouldn't be sitting on this bench today if I hadn't taken that job with Ken Salazar, because he fought to make sure I didn't get passed over. I had to leave that job to go back to private practice so that I could make money to put my son through school. And then I became the general counsel for CU Boulder, and then I got the job. But I've loved every job I've ever had. And when I stopped loving it, I moved on and I did something else that I really loved, because that's how you give 100%. And don't be afraid. I mean, somebody told me, my boss actually who hired me, he was the general counsel for CU Boulder. He retired after he recruited me there. And he said to me, Christy, I've never dived off a cliff the way you have. And I'm like, I don't dive off cliffs. I'm like the most conservative person when it comes to any risk like that. He goes, no. He said, when you decide in your professional life that you want to change, you're not afraid to try something totally different. And they have all been different jobs. And that is what makes me, I think, the judge I am today, is I'm not afraid to learn new areas. And that's what law school teaches you, is how you can retool yourself in different areas. You can do so many different jobs. So don't be afraid to dive off a cliff. If you're not happy with your job, find a job that's going to make you happy.
So in that blessing, let me invoke two real inspirational people who are both CU Law grads. One, Bernie Burscher, who's with us here. He'll join me in my breakout group. Bernie is at an age when many people retire, and he's thinking about his next act, which involves learning how to be a computer programmer, among other things. And he said, back in the 60s, I did Fortran. Paul Ohm will appreciate that. Why can't I learn Java? That spirit is a great spirit for lawyers to have. And he, of course, invoked Roy Romer, who's another wonderful grad, who, when he retired as governor at age 69, said, I think I've got one more good career in me, and went to be superintendent of the Los Angeles Public Schools. And so the way you can have a career path that continues to challenge you is pretty amazing for everyone in this room, and it requires all of you to own your careers with a little bit of a choose your own adventure or risk, tolerant mindset, because it doesn't just happen to you if you lean back. You've got to be leaning in, whether it's going to career counseling or talking to your mentors. So let's hear from some younger people who are on their career paths, their thoughts on it. G, you want to start?
Yeah, I would just say quickly, and I mean this respectfully, nobody in here likely knows what they want to do. And the biggest mistake that I saw people make is they're so married to, they came in saying they want to be a DA, or because they came in saying they want to be a PD. And they get so married to that they close off other interesting things. The job I had this summer, I worked for an insurance defense litigation firm. And I was like, oh, great. And then I got there, and 3 days later, I was called, email fell. I was like, this is it. This is exactly what I want to do. I want to litigate. And I never thought reading and writing memos and motions I would enjoy. And I absolutely 100% loved it. And just like not being defined by your grades. First semester, legal writing, I got a B. First memo I did, and at my job this summer for a partner, he came down to my office and said that was excellent. And so you can't stay stuck in where you are, and you have to be able to try, you have to be willing to try things and knock it out the park. If you get asked to sweep the floor, knock it out the park. If you get asked to hand out brochures, talk to people, here's your brochure, how can I help you? Let me take you to this. Anything you do at this place, if you knock it out the park, you're gonna be successful. And that's, in the most simple terms, if you just do the best you can do on every single project, you'll be a successful person. And don't be scared to try something else, because that is truly how you get better, is when you're uncomfortable. When you're uncomfortable, you're growing. If you're sitting comfy, there's probably not a lot happening for you.
Well, yeah, and I think G mentioned, you have to lay the groundwork. I mean, I knew I wanted to go into public interest, and so I sat there and I was like, okay, what do? I went home, took an unpaid internship my 2L summer, which was very scary, and I worked for Colorado Legal Services there. Then I externed my 3L year in their Denver office, and they knew I was for real. I had made these connections with 2 different offices, and I knew I wanted to work for them. However, every staff meeting that I went to, they would be like, well, we don't know if we're gonna have funding to pay you all the next quarter. And so I was like, they're not gonna have money to hire me. So I needed to find my way to own my own career. If I wanted to work there, I was gonna have to find out how to do it. This fellowship opportunity came through, and it was like, design your own project around juvenile and family law. And I was like, this is perfect for me. And it was only perfect for me because I made connections with CLS, and they knew me and they trusted my work, and they would house me. And I had made connections here at CU. I had people championing me, being like, this is perfect for you. Design your project. I bounced ideas off my clinic professor. My friends, like, do you think this would work? CLS, like, what do you need? How can I add value to you? And I ended up getting it, and it's paved my way to be a staff attorney at Colorado Legal Services. And I consider myself very fortunate, but you don't just get handed a job. I mean, maybe a few people who are like top 5% do, but it's just not realistic. You need to get out there. You need to put your nose to the grindstone. You need to take risks, like Judge Arpaio said, and it's not always fun. Did I want to sit in Pueblo in my parents' basement all summer? No, but I met great people, and I'm really glad I did it.
One thing Tanya said that I think is really worth mentioning, and I imagine it's something that I'll be listening to this advice later and trying to remind myself of it. You're never locked in, right? You try to do immigration law, which is something I did, and it was like, this is too intense for me. This is not a good fit. Okay, great, I pivot. You're not getting married here when you try to figure out what you're trying to do. This is hopefully something you have a lot of reason. You go down a path because you think you'll like it. You try it. If you don't, then you change your mind and you do something else. The thing is to not get stuck in the fact you didn't like it. So I went from immigration law to education law to workers' comp law. I did all those things, and at moments it felt like, man, I'm so inconsistent. I'm bouncing all around, but you need to have enough courage to try it. And if you don't like it, okay, try something new and just keep moving forward and asking for help to move forward, because you might not find something you like right away. For me, it took a lot of trials, and I wouldn't even say errors, just being honest with how I felt about something. Not everything's a fit for everybody, and you should be you, but your version of you as a lawyer. You're not changing who you are. You're finding how you can take the skill sets and interests you have to do good. And that could mean so many different things for everybody in this room. Don't feel stuck just because what works for other people doesn't work for you.
So the metaphor I use is your first job is not a marriage, it's more like a first date. And so you need to keep your mind open. We have 10 minutes where we'd love to get some questions from you all. I am not afraid to call on people, and that's what you get when you have professors. Let's start with Nate.
Yeah, so I think we've all heard quite a bit about how rigorous the academic life will be here, and how we're probably going to have some hiccups there. And from the talk I've heard around the lockers, that we're prepared for that. My question relates to other life situations. So, I think sometimes there are things that happen in our lives that are even more powerful than getting a B or, God forbid, C. So I was wondering if you all have any experiences or seen anything about how people handle things, trauma that happen outside of school or family members or other situations. How you stay focused and stay successful when life throws you a curveball.
I would give your people a heads up and say, hey, like, this is my first semester of law school. Like, it's going to be tough just because I don't call you, once a week, Grandma. I'm still thinking about you and I love you, That's what I did. And I had some friends who were mad at me after that first semester, like, oh, you disappeared. I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, I was trying to figure out life, And that being said, though, a lot of my colleagues had kids, and those people were amazing. They had a life outside of law school. and they were completely prepared when they came into the classroom. And I admired that because, they were moms first and foremost, but they were also amazing students. So I think if you can just remember that, like, yes, I do have a life out of law school, like, I can balance. It's all about balance and try to do both, but just give your people a heads up.
Well, and on your people heads up, that's both directions. Give us a heads up. So Dean Leary, who's been given the appropriate shout out as the nicest person you'll ever meet, is a good first person to.
Thank you.
And, some of those people with kids are going to have kids which could have really serious conditions that might require surgery, and that comes first. And we're here to support you. Some of you with grandparents may have grandparents who pass away. And so things are going to happen to you, and you need to live your life. You can give people a little bit of warning, but you can't put your life on hold. You have to live it. And we are here to help you accommodate that situation. Don't let any pride think you have to do it on your own. To the contrary, let us help you.
Well, and that's not just for law school. That's just a life lesson. I can't tell you how many times, I've had to sit down with a law clerk or a staff member because their performance was just not up to what it should have been, only to have them tell me that they had this crisis in their life. And I said, you need to swallow that pride and tell me. I'm not an ogre. If you had told me that, I understand life goes on and you may need to take extra time here and all that, but in your life going on, you have to swallow that pride and go to people. You don't want to use it as an excuse, but if it is a justification for why your head is not 100% into the game, you need to let people know that, because it'll go a lot better for you. I mean, if I weren't the type of person that just really confronts issues, and I just looked at their work and said, I'm not putting up with that. No, I sit them down and I talk to them, and then they tell me this comes on. So it's just a life skill you have to learn to let go of that pride and confide in people if they need to know, and that you're not 100% in.
So can I plus one this? I'll give you some specifics. It's a great question. In recent years, and Whiting can maybe refresh my recollection in terms of a student approached me with severe depression, and do we have to report this? I don't even know as a professor. So, he wasn't looking to me as a therapist. He was just giving me a heads up that he thought that it was affecting his work product for clients in the clinic before it became an issue. Great technique. Great technique. Another student had cancer, and he came to me and said, I'm not sure whether I'll be able to do it this semester. Before it started affecting client work, before it started affecting his partner, we were able to get ahead of it. Great technique. On the other hand, a student in our program a few years ago essentially failed out of law school her fall semester. Debrief with her. She was going through a divorce. Her husband walked out the day before the exams. And of course, we would have said, let's reschedule this. Do not take an exam in that state of mind. Another student of mine last year had a good friend die the day before an exam. He absolutely should not have taken that exam. We're going to have different personality types on the faculty, but I really encourage you, reach out before the performance. Reach out before it affects a client. This starts now, it'll go forward. Super important question, and hard sometimes to do, especially if you're not feeling great, but do reach out before the performance.
Great. Question, there's one back there.
Can I touch on?
Oh,
on
sure,
that
go for
question?
it first.
The thing I ended there was a 3.5-year relationship that ended about, I don't know, 2-3 days before a memo was due, and so that's a good buddy of mine here said, one thing you need to realize, the people in this room have a lot of these people. They're going to be at your wedding, they're going to be at your funeral, they're going to be there when your kids are born. Some of these people are going to be your best friends in your life. Surround yourself with really good, supportive people that aren't judgmental, and then have a good cry with them, and being honest, and that's what you do. And they're going to love you, and they're going to support you, and they're going to help you get through it. And the inverse of that as well is that, and I had this situation with a friend who was breaking down, and I took her hand and we walked outside, and I said, just look at where you are. You're in Boulder, Colorado. You're in one of the most beautiful places maybe in the world. You're at a beautiful law school. You get taught by brilliant people, and you have to remember, some of these things are a little bit of first world problems, and you have to be able to put them into context, but it's going to be traumatic. Some of you, I can let you know right now, the relationship that you're currently in, you probably won't be in. Not all of you, but some of you, that's going to happen. Ladies, if you need a shoulder to cry on, let me. No, I'm kidding. But that's life, and you have to be able to roll with that. But the worst thing you can do is keep it bottled up and not talk to people, get some support, and then don't wallow in it. Take a few days and figure it out, and then have a strategy to figure it out. Dean Leary, Phil, all these people are also good people to help you get from the wallowing phase. I wallowed in Professor Power's office, and then it was like, okay, we're wallowing right now, and then, now let's, play, go to plan B. And their plan B is never going to be, hey, don't worry about it, I'll give you an A. Their plan B is that's your grade, or, blah, blah, blah. But here are the next 2 or 3 steps we can take so you can emerge from that crisis.
Okay, last question. Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to be a bit of a devil's advocate here. And so we're here talking about growth mindsets, and the book, conveniently enough, has a lot of very carefully selected case studies that support the growth mindset or fixed mindset. My question is, can any of you think of a situation where a fixed mindset might be more appropriate than a growth mindset, or where a growth mindset and a fixed mindset might clash, and the fixed mindset would be the one that emerges victorious?
No. No, I understand what you're saying about the specific examples, and it's interesting you bring that up, because when I was talking to my husband about this panel, he had your same kind of, this feels all very crafted to get to a specific result, and like, how sure are we this is going to work in the real world? So I take the fixed mindset, growth mindset words as it's just like a strategy for solving problems. So what I take away from that whole book is not that I'm now going to relish failure. Oh, I can't wait to get bad feedback. Like, I can't wait. That's not what it means to me. And so I think what you're kind of pushing on is, how absolute are we thinking about these things? And so for me, I take the mindset book and I think this is a way to approach problems. So I receive feedback that's hard. I encounter something in my life that feels uncomfortable. Now I have this tool, this set of tools to say, all right, this is how I'm going to think about this problem. So maybe the mindset fixed growth doesn't work for you, but as far as a mindset for approaching problems, maybe that's a better way to think about it. It's a framework for deciding, I've gotten feedback, what do I do with that feedback? I'm going to set up some strategies. I'm going to talk to people who can help me understand what to do with this feedback. So for me, the growth fixed mindset thing worked in the context of the book, but when I go to my everyday life, it's more of this is some tools I can use to help solve a problem as I encounter it in the real world. So I think that's always relevant. So if you take it out of the technical jargon of the book, if you take it out of those kind of technical, very tailored examples, it's just another way to think about being a problem solver. And that's always better than not being a problem solver, in my mind.
And I would say, I see one scenario where a fixed mindset might be better than a growth mindset, but you'd have to come from a very wealthy family who is willing to just lay it all out for you. You go get your law degree, and then they have a position for you, and they're going to promote you whether you do well or not.
Because then you actually are entitled to the job.
But for the real world, no. I mean, what makes you a better person are those obstacles and those hurdles that you have to figure out how you're going to overcome them. Because I do believe, I've had a lot of obstacles in my life, and I'm a better person because I've been able to address them and overcome them and learn from them. So, yeah, I think if you're a very indulged type of person, you don't have to worry about a growth mindset. But most of us here don't have parents that are going to be able to do that for us, or a family that's going to be able to. I had them in Harvard. They were the trust fund kids. And yeah, they didn't put out a whole lot there because they knew they didn't need to. They already had a trust fund set up for them. They knew they had a position in their grandfather's company or something, but that doesn't work for the rest of us.
I think it's an interesting question and a good one to wrestle with in some of the breakout groups, especially as you try to decide what's useful in this book for you. But if we go back to G talking about why that first semester didn't sit well with him, at some point there was a certain level of pride, of performance, and a vision that he has that he's a high achiever, right? That's a fixed mindset sort of mentality, and that motivated him to take a series of actions that it sounds like paid some dividends during the second semester, right? So I think there are instances. I could also think of, when it comes to doing performances, that's generally not the time in which you say, well, I'm just sort of figuring this out right now, Your Honor. This is my first argument. I think you try to do your best. At that point, you've got the idea that you're going to perform competent legal services, if not outstanding legal services. So I think it is interesting to think about how this relates to motivation for yourself and some context in which this may be more applicable than others.
And Phil, before we recess, I said one of my quid pro quos for coming here today was I get to do a little spiel. I have just set up La School Si Se Puede, which is a mentoring program where we have taken this year 12, there are 8 entering college freshmen, 3 entering college sophomores, and 1 junior, but they're all in the future going to be entering college freshmen. And it goes with my serendipity article, that I didn't want to leave it to serendipity. They're all first generation, except for 1 college students. They're mostly lower income. And what we're doing is we're matching them with 1 law student. G is one of my mentors, as are a couple of other law students here. 1 law student mentor, 2 lawyer mentors. We have enough people this year, and what the mentors are going to do is essentially give them the advice that you probably wish you had had when you were college freshmen, as to what you can do to get the experiences, get the better LSAT test scores, what classes you should be taking, so that we can prepare them. These are all high-achieving high school kids who are interested in becoming lawyers, and we're helping guide their development in a way that I wished I had had, and most of my mentors wish they had had, so that by the time they get to their senior year in college, they will hopefully have a resume and a book of experiences that will not only help them be successful in law school and in practice, but is going to hopefully get them into whatever law school they want to go to. So my plea to you is, you got to get through this first year. You need to put all your attention to doing that. But next year, we're taking 15, hopefully, new kids into this program. So I'm going to have 27 in the pipeline. And then next year after that, we're going to have 15 more. I'm going to need law student mentors. So if you're at all interested, if you are the type of person who likes to mentor, then please sign up. Plus, I have 3 mentors, because when somebody gets busy with trial or whatever, the other 2 can bring it up. But my hope is also that the 2 lawyer mentors, one is hopefully going to be senior, one's going to be mid to junior, and then the law student, there's going to be mentoring going all up and down that pipeline. So that's my plea. Next year, hopefully, if you're interested in Law School Si Se Puede, let me know, let Phil know, because I am expecting that I will need to have at least 7 or 8 law students.
And G talked about building his network and building relationships. The best way to do that is to get involved in meaningful activities that resonate with you, whether that's in your church or a great volunteer activity or playing on a softball team. It's important you continue to live your lives and you do things that replenish you. And one thing that G did last year was he did a lot of things during the year that reminded him of what he loved and what he was good at. So you have a point of reference. It's important that you don't stop being you. And if there are things that appeal to you, even in your first year, I know for this program that's not an option, you're going to have some opportunities to do that. And so it's going to be a fun, exciting year. We're all here with you. The next step is for you to get your lunch and then go to the room to process some of this in a smaller group. Thanks very much.